So I'd like to introduce Tim Lightfoot now. He's a professor at Texas A&M University working on genetic regulation of physical activity. He also works on the physiological responses to race car driving as well as the physical responses to playing rock music. So he is essentially the rock star of exercise physiology. And I had the privilege of working with him for 6 years. I did both my master's and my PhD with him. So we were just talking, there's a lot of stories. I won't share all of them because he has worse ones on me. But a couple notes is one of the things that I wanted everyone to get on this early career day was there are so many other things that go into your career path. And when I think about my academic experience with my PhD and my master's, there's two things that come to mind. There's two very important life lessons. One is that dry ice will last for 24 hours, and I know exactly how many paper clips it takes to make a rain gun. And so let me explain. I was doing my master's with Tim at the University of North Carolina, Charlotte, when we got the opportunity to go to Texas A&M. And he was kind enough to bring me with me, and at this time I was dirt poor and had to move my house. He said, well, I'll tell you what, we'll move you and the lab in one truck. So we flew in from Texas into Charlotte that night. The next morning we went, we got a truck. We spent the day loading the truck up. We then drove to the lab, loaded all of our samples, which we had to keep frozen at minus 80 degrees Celsius. And then we proceeded to drive 24 hours straight from Charlotte to Texas. I'm told we drove through Alabama. I don't remember Alabama. In fact, I remember several times calling him and saying, we need to stop for like 5 minutes because I'm going to fall asleep at the wheel. But he was good to go. He said, let's keep going, Dave, let's keep going. So we finally made it to Texas. Got our samples unloaded. Like I said, that's a blank spot for me in terms of details. The other thing that I remember is one Saturday morning we were in the lab hanging, was it plastic sheeting, I guess, to prevent water from the stadium coming into our lab. And so it's these moments that really kind of define your career path in my PhD experience. So one of the things I encourage is that the speakers that are speaking today share the stories that are uncommon to the career path that you took. Because I think the students will get a lot to take away from that. So it's my pleasure to introduce Tim Lightfoot, and I hope you guys have a great career day. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Good afternoon. Well, thank you. I thought, geez, the first session, everybody's dead already. I was going to say, David, I'm sorry, I killed your audience. All right, turn that down. So I'm greatly honored. Thank you, David. Thank you to the Student Advisory Committee for asking me to give this keynote tonight. Thank you for all being here and starting your conference with me. Many of you may remember I ended the conference last year, and so you're starting with your conference with me this year, and we'll see. Hopefully you'll have a great conference the rest of the week. As I said, it's a great honor to be here. One of the things that over the last, I've been in this business for a long time. This is, I believe, the 30th year that I have come to ACSM. I haven't been a faculty member quite that long, but pretty close, actually. And one of the things that I've seen, especially in my doctoral students and young faculty that I have worked with over the years, is that there are a lot of things that you don't know yet, and you'll find out. And that's part of the beauty of the journey. But there are a few things I can remember, especially when I was doing job searches, when we were doing job searches, looking at applications, and I would think, man, if someone would just tell this person to do this, their job application would be so much better. And so there are all these things that you don't know yet that are a fun part of the journey. And so what I wanted to do today was take a little bit of time and cover some topics that the Student Advisory Committee gave me. But it's all in this theme of hopefully these are some things that you can keep in mind that will help you on the next stage of your journey. And it is a journey. And I hope you enjoy the journey. I certainly have enjoyed mine. There's plenty of room up here. Come on up. Don't hesitate. I won't bite. I won't come off the stage probably. So there are, they say, 4 different types of knowing, and we're going to talk about this one here for a few minutes. And this is called the unknown unknowns. A former defense secretary of the United States supposedly was the one that made this up, but he was actually quoting an information scientist, this guy named Kirk Bourne, he's at George Mason right now. He came up with this term back in about 2000 to talk about the things that we don't know yet, and that we don't know that we're going to know them yet. And again, so this is kind of the theme for this whole talk. But you'll find that these unknown unknowns multiply throughout your career. And so you'll learn something, you think you've got it under control, and then you'll find out later on that there were other things. And so I like to think of it this way. This is a thought that gets me through the day many times, and this is from a song by Don Henley, who was one of the Eagles. The more I know, the less I understand. And there are many people in this audience, I think, that can sympathize with that. But that's actually taken from a quote by Albert Einstein, that the more I know, the more I realize how much I don't know. And so when you have someone like Albert Einstein that says that, I think we all have to get comfortable with the fact there are going to be a lot of unknown unknowns in our life. And again, my goal today is to hopefully crack a few of them open for you, so when you go to that next stage, it won't be such a big leap in many cases. So the topics I was given several topics. They said we'd like for you to touch on these topics, and I'm going to share those with you. And I will warn you all that I teach a 15-week class on basically these 6 topics. So unless we mean to be here for the next 15 weeks, it'll be kind of an abbreviated version. We're going to talk a little bit about you are in absolutely the best business in the world, the multiple career paths that you have available to you, and maybe some decision points you can make. We're going to talk about external funding, and it is important. We're going to talk about learning to juggle and balance your career and personal life. We're going to talk about what happens when it all goes wrong or goes south, and then we're going to talk about some things in the future, I think, that are coming that maybe you need to think about and prepare for. So let's just start off. You're in the best business. This is actually a wordle that I made up from using just the advanced program. Take the advanced program and stick it in, and these are the important words. But I bring this up because all of you being here, all of you already know that you're in a great business, but there are many reasons that you're in the best business in the world. And one of the reasons is that there is support everywhere around you as a student, as a burgeoning faculty member, as a burgeoning professional in this field. I am completely humbled every time I come to this meeting, the people that are here still that have supported me throughout my career. And all you have to do is look around the room. We have Dixie Thompson over here from Tennessee. There's Dixie over there. We have Mark Walsh back here in the background, who actually started the early career day about 4 years ago. Actually suggested it on a teleconference that I was on. We have Amanda Boyce from the NIH, and hopefully you'll go see her. She's the world's best program director at NIH. We have John Quidnery here from Auburn. All these people, and many others that I haven't mentioned. I see Don Torok standing in the middle back there. These are people that have been in the field that will help you in your business. And they're gracious and they're glad to give you that support. And I don't know about many other professions. I know about a few, but exercise physiology or exercise science, however you want to call us, is unusual in that fact that we have so many people. Over my career, there's only been 2 people that I can point out that have not been helpful, have not been graceful, have not helped when I've asked. But everyone else has. And so you're in a wonderful business just for the support that you have. As I said, that exercise physiology is friendly, in general, supportive. I'm going to show you a picture. This is a guy named Kelly Stewart, who was my master's degree advisor. He unfortunately died very young, but he was the professor who looked at me. I was going to be a coach, a basketball coach. And he looked at me and said, "You ever thought about being a professor?" And it struck me. I had never thought about being a professor. Those are the kind of people that are in this business. But you have some responsibility in this, and that is that you have to have the guts to go say hello and talk to these people. That's what they're here for. Don't be afraid. Go up and introduce yourself. Tell them about yourself, who you are, what your dreams are, what you want to do. That's how you make contacts. That's how you make networking. My career hinged, not only when Kelly said, "Do you want to be a professor?" but when I had the guts, and Don Franks and Ed Halley at University of Tennessee encouraged me to walk up to a lady named Diane Spittler, who was at the Southeast ACSM meeting many, many years ago, and she was the director of research at Kennedy Space Center. I wanted to do aerospace physiology at the time, and they said, "Go talk to her," and I was so scared, and she was so nice, invited me to come to the lab at Kennedy Space Center. And my career changed there because I wound up being at Kennedy Space Center. I wound up going to Johns Hopkins as a result of that. And I wouldn't have done any of that if I hadn't had the guts and the encouragement to do that. So you have the guts. Go say hello to people. Okay? That's what they're here for. And then think about having a mentoring team. As you meet these people, keep them on your mentoring team. We all need mentoring teams. I still have people that I call when I need advice. you develop that team as well. Don't hesitate. Again, these people want to help you. So we're in the best business because you have a lot of support, and you should know that up front. Now, we're also in a great business because there are multiple paths that you can take along the way. And I want to talk a little bit about those paths and maybe how you can make some choices. So many times people think that if you're in this business, you're just going to go in academia, and that's not necessarily the case. You can't see it very well. It's very small. This was a report that was put out in 2001 by the Pew Charitable Trust, and it was looked at the state of doctoral education and what doctoral students did. Now, this came out in 2001. It's a little bit dated, but no one has done an update to this yet. And so there's some interesting findings here. They may be a little dated, just to warn you. What they found is that 63% of the students that entered a PhD program had the intention of going into academia. That means 37% didn't. Where are these people going? And those people, that hadn't been talked about much, and we're going to talk about that just a little bit. Okay? So there's some other pathways there. Now, there is some competition out there. You should know some of the newer statistics. The National Science Foundation in 2012 reported that in 2012 there were 10,789 doctoral degrees awarded in life sciences, and that was about a 5% increase since 2007. And that's been a steady rate of increase over the last 20 years or so. So there are more and more people, and kinesiology is included in this, not subdivided out, so I can't tell you that exactly, but kinesiology is in life sciences. Also, there are right now about 22,000 people doing postdocs in life sciences. So there's competition out there for you, for jobs, for postdocs. But the good news for you that in exercise science and exercise physiology, there is growth. And there's no hard numbers that I know of, other than talking to my colleagues around the country. Exercise science in most places has seen huge increases in undergraduate enrollment because people are really getting the idea it's a great prep degree for medical-related postgraduate. Any of my colleagues in here that teach undergraduates will tell you that probably 3/4 of our undergraduates now either want to go into something like PT, OT, medical school. I've had dental students. And so this has led to an explosion around the country in programs. The good news about it, a couple of good things about that, I mean, first of all, there's going to be a lot of jobs in our field. But the second thing is that it provides validity for our field. More and more now I'm seeing professionals in other fields that are going, exercise physiology, that's a cool degree. I'd like to work with you because you guys are doing some good stuff. You're putting out good students. And so I'm hearing that from colleagues in other fields. And so this student explosion, the exposure my colleagues in other fields are getting to our students are providing us validity. So that's the good news. There is growth. Now, there are certainly some other paths you can take. Most of you have heard these things before. You can go into industry, things like pharmaceuticals, into the health industry, and there's a wide, health industry is huge, whether it be corporate wellness, whether it be supplements, whether it be device to sales, whatever it may be. There's tons of things you can do. There are actually clinical pathways that you can go into. Certainly you can go into government service as well. You can certainly go into policy. We certainly need people with your background in the policy field. You can also go in to do research and scientific administration at places like NIH, DOD, etc. Those are viable fields, and you can talk to Amanda. Amanda, where are you at? Oh, Amanda's up here in the peach. There you go. Yeah, you can see Amanda and talk to her if you're interested in those types of fields. Entrepreneurship. There are 2 great sessions today on entrepreneurship. There are more and more people in our field that have advanced degrees that are actually doing their own thing. And that's good for you. I mean, I worked with, there was a lady that I know in Charlotte who had set up basically her own research unit. And she was writing for funding and doing community research. So those are things that you can do as well. I can't get away without saying something about academia, certainly the traditional teaching and research jobs. But I want to add one other part to this. And that is, this is kind of a new area, and that's scientific administration within the university. Folks, compliance is with us to stay. Whether it's human research subjects or animal or biosafety, we all have to have that done. We all have to be compliant with that. And so the army that is needed at each university to ensure compliance, to make sure that you're not out of compliance with the federal regulations, is becoming bigger and bigger. And so as a student, that's something, if you're interested in doing that, That's a good path because that can put you onto a path towards higher administrative roles in the university system. So that's certainly a viable opportunity. Here's a wonderful website that one of my students found, and I will point this out to you. It's called versatilephd.com. Versatilephd.com. Most of your universities will have a subscription to this already. You'll need to dig around a little bit to find out where to get that, the passwords and so forth. Versatilephd.com. And it actually talks quite a bit about alternative pathways for PhDs out there. It's a great resource. Versatilephd.com. So let's take a few minutes and talk about funding. Funding is a big deal in today's academic world, actually in most areas where exercise science is involved. I love this cartoon. I wish it was this way. Give us dollars and we all win. That would work well. Unfortunately, it's not quite that easy nowadays. And so as we talk about it, you're going to have people throughout your career talk to you about external funding, and you need to write grants. And I could do a whole nother lecture on why you should be doing that. But we should recognize right up front, funding is tough. But I'm going to give you a secret. Funding has always been tough. Always been tough. And so you really have to be the best you can be. You have to be the best in your game to get funding. A good friend of mine, as I whined and moaned one time about a grant that we got poor reviews on, and let me break here for a second. We've got chairs up here. If you guys would like to come up, you get to meet somebody new, sit next to them. Come on up. I don't want to wear y'all out by standing up so early in the conference. Wait till Thursday or Friday. Plenty of room. Thank you for those of you moving over. I had a friend of mine who used to console me after grants, and one day I think he just got tired of hearing me whine about the reviewers or whatever, and he said, Tim, you have to remember one thing that's important about funding. He says, oh, just move it back. There we go. Oh, they did a great job up here, Lauren, I'm telling you. He says you have to ask yourself, and you have to show in your grant applications why you're worth $1 million. And if you put it in that aspect, think about that for a minute. You're asking usually most of the time an agency to give you a large amount of money. It may not be $1 million, it may be more than that. But that's a lot of money. Why are you worth that? So you have to always have that mindset when you go after funding. Why are you worth that $1 million? Are you? I think most of you are. Federal pay lines are low. I think Amanda will tell you that. I heard a talk I'm going to refer to in a few minutes by one of the NIH administrators recently, and she said, unfortunately, it's going to go even lower probably for the next 18 months. But it will go up after that. They are projecting it's going to go back up after that. So if you haven't started writing yet, don't worry. Hopefully you'll start after 18 months, and hopefully it'll be better then. The other thing that you should know in your part of your career, there are good people within this organization that are working to make it easier or better, or for you to have better chances in the exercise world. People like Amanda over here, people like Frank Booth, people that are taking their time and their effort to go to NIH, to go to politicians and talk about why it's important that we fund exercise research. And these are things and these are activities that these people don't have to do. But they're doing it for your benefit and so that you can have a better chance. And so make sure that you take a chance or take a time, talk to Mark Ross, talk to Frank Booth, talk to those folks and ask them what they're doing and if you can help. Because they're the ones that are right now working to make it better for you down in the long run. So it's tough, but it's going to get better. I'm optimistic. The hard part about writing grants is that you are going to fail more than you will succeed. Most of you, because you're sitting in this room, have succeeded all your life. You've done well on exams, you flew through school, many of you were athletes, elite athletes, etc., etc. And so you really haven't had many times where you failed. If you failed, you just stop doing it. And that's the problem with grant writing, is that you're going to probably fail more than you'll succeed. And so the hardest thing that many of us have to do is figure out how do we get back up, dust ourselves off, and get back on the horse again. Because we're not used to doing that. And so what I would tell you, don't give up. Don't give up. It's trite, but the grants, the people that are unsuccessful writing grants are the ones that don't write grants. The ones that continue to write grants are the ones that wind up being successful in the end. Now, along with that, though, you have to keep learning about the grant process. You know your field really well. You know the topic you're interested in, whether it's glucose regulation or genetics or something else. You know that field inside out and backwards. You need to learn the grant writing game inside out and backwards. You need to learn that stuff. You need to tap into good sources and pay attention to the things that are happening. Let me give you two quick ones, and there's many out there. This is a book, and you may not be able to see it very well. It's the Grant Writer's Handbook. It's done, if you type in, it's the Grant Writer's Workbook. If you type in Grant Central into Google or Grant Writer's Workbook, this will pop up. This is a great book because they tell you why NIH wants each of the sections written like they do. They don't tell you how to do, they tell you how to do it, but they also tell you why. And that for me as a scientist, that was incredibly important to hear why. Okay? The other resource, and there's many of them, this is Dr. Sally Rocky at NIH. She is the director of Extramural funding. Is that correct, Amanda? Yeah. She's one of the big, we'll call it the big high wigwams persons up there. She does a blog, called the Rock Talk. Go on, sign up for that, because she covers a lot of the stuff, a lot of the questions that are going on about funding. I was privileged to hear her speak recently at A&M. We brought her in, and she talked, and she was the one that gave us this up here. Pay lines are low, but hopefully will be better in 18 months. So that's hearing it from the horse's mouth down there. So find out those sources. Look, NIH grants, and I'm going to focus on NIH for a second. NIH grants have undergone more changes in the last 5 years than I think they've undergone over the last 30 combined. Any of you that have struggled recently with the new BioSketch know what I'm talking about. And it's just changed. If you don't know there's a new BioSketch required, you should figure that one out, because that's coming. And it takes you more than 5 minutes to put together. Big time. So these changes are always happening. And if you want to write grants, and you're going to need to, you got to stay on top of this. This has to become a second avocation for you. You should also, let me encourage you to think out of the box. Don't think in the box as much. Everybody thinks, oh, NIH, DOD, DOE, etc., etc. Think out of the box and cultivate other sources. And you've probably heard of some of these before, but don't hesitate to go after them. Industry. My boss, Rick Kreider, has made his world with industry funding, and he does a great job. He's very good about, number one, he gets the money, but he's careful with the strings that come attached with that. And any of the advanced folks in this room will tell you industry comes with some strings. But if you can manage that, that's a good way to fund your research, if you're interested in that. Foundations are another way. That's you may have a better match than one of the big funding agencies. It may be a great place for money for pilot data to get you started. There may be less red tape. Think about the foundations. And then as you move on in your career, and you may not be ready for this yet, but I'm going to encourage you to keep in the back of your mind endowments. Endowments. This is something that you can build towards permanence. Most of you will be at universities where you will have alumni that want to build something. Maybe they've done very well in business and they want to come back and give back to the university. When you get to your university campus, if you're working in academia, you need to meet and get to know your fund development officer. Find out who they are. Tell them the story you have, why your research is important, and they can start translating that out to the people that actually have the money and want to fund these things. Endowments are great. So let me move on. You better learn to juggle. This is a great quote. My life must be a circus. My family expects me to jump through hoops. The people I work with are clowns. I'm juggling career and personal life, and the whole darn thing is a balancing act. And you will feel like this in your career. Absolutely. Again, talk to any of the old timers in the room here. They will tell you this is tough sometimes to do this. And so let me give you some thoughts on this. There are probably better books out there you could read on this. I think one of the things you need to do is remind yourself often, why do you do what you do? Why are you working on your PhD? Why are you working as a faculty member? Why are you working in industry? Wherever you wind up being. You need to be very clear about why you're doing that. Is this a pursuit of your passion? Are you passionate about what you're doing and your job allows you to do that? Is it because you need to make money to provide for your family? And most of the time, at least in my case, I'm very grateful that I can say both of these reasons are the reason I do what I do. But it's very important for you to step back and realize, why do you do what you do? We ask candidates sometimes, what would you do if you didn't get paid? What would you do for free? And I've often thought, when I've asked that question of candidates, I've often thought, well, I wouldn't be at the university. There are other things I'd rather do for free. Okay? University's not a bad place. But always step back and think about that. So what I want you to do is, as you think about balancing career and your personal life, remember to enjoy the things that you're working hard to provide for. For me, and this is what I work hard to provide for. That's my wife and our dog. That's what I work to provide for, a good living for. And so I ask you to think about that when you get stressed out. What are you working towards? Now, I'm not going to say that sacrifice is not called for in this business at times. There are times that you have to sacrifice. You may give up a weekend. You may give up multiple weekends. You may work late. There are those times that you have to do that. Just don't make that a daily requirement of your job. If you have to sacrifice your personal life every day for your job, then we need to talk. Okay? The other thing I would really suggest that you do that may help you balance things, learn more about your craft. If you stay in academia, and that's kind of what I'm focusing on, if you stay in academia, learn how to be a better professor. Learn how to be we talked about writing better grants. Why not be a better professor? Figure out how to do that. The more you know about being a good professor, the better you'll be. Let me give you one recommendation. Before you ever become a faculty member, you should read this book, Advice for New Faculty Members, written by a guy named Robert Boyce. And the fabulous thing about this book is that he actually has data to support what he advises. He has really strange advice, like don't spend too much time teaching to make you more successful. I'm going to let you read the book to figure out where that comes from. Okay? So I would really recommend anybody read this book. Before you become a faculty member, read this book. This is a fabulous book. A little bit dated. It hadn't been updated in a while, but it's still, the things he talks about just are so cogent and just really relate to that. And I think you can get some advice there that will help you balance these things. Now, what happens when it all goes south and all goes wrong? Is that not funny? Y'all can laugh. That's okay. I saw that picture and I said, I got to figure out somewhere to put this in here. This is just, that poor donkey, he just didn't know he was going to get up that day and have that bad a day. So what do you do when things go wrong? And there are things going to go wrong in your career. And many of you may have already experienced this. You may have had a manuscript rejected that you thought was perfect. I don't know about y'all, every time I send a manuscript in, it's perfect. And the reviewers remind me that it's not. Same thing with grants. Same thing about curriculum. Maybe courses that I wanted to get approved didn't get approved. What do you do when those kind of things happen? What happens when you don't get the job you wanted? Well, one of the things you can be sure of, things will go wrong in your career. There'll be small ones, there'll be minor ones, there'll be big ones. And what you need to do is have some kind of strategy to handle this and think about it. And so let me advise a couple of things. First of all, if you can, take a deep breath and put it down. Whatever has just gone wrong, put it away. Oftentimes we talk in my grant writing course, we'll talk about if you get a bad review, read the review and then put it in the drawer for a few days. Let it settle out. Bad review on a manuscript, do the same thing. Put it away. You can think about it later. Okay? But don't think about it when you're ticked off at it. Then what you need to do is reassess and redirect your efforts. What could you have done better? What did you need to do differently? How can you now come back at this from a different direction? Again, persistence is key to be a successful PhD down the road. And so you may fail the first time, but if you don't try and you don't go back at it, you really have failed. What's your backup plan? You should have a backup plan for everything that you're doing. Everything you're doing. What's your backup plan? If you reassess and you redirect, do you do your backup plan or do you do something else? The last thing I'll leave you with before we go into the next section, I hope that you have confidence in yourself and your knowledge and your skills. One of the things I saw with young faculty members for many years is that they were so pleased to be there, and they were so, don't take this, they were in awe of the senior faculty members that had actually made it through, that they thought, there's no way I can do this. And so oftentimes if there was any kind of setback, manuscript, grant, whatever, they doubted themselves and doubted their skill levels. And there are multiple stories out there of Nobel Prize winners who people told them their ideas were crazy, and they had enough confidence in their skills that they made this stuff work. I would encourage you to do the same thing. You're where you're at for a reason. You've worked hard. You have skills. You're smart. Remember that when things go wrong, and that you just need to reassess and redirect, and you'll be fine. Tomorrow's going to be here soon. I think that there are some things that, there are many things I think that you're going to face that I could never predict, that many of us could never predict. There's certainly things that have happened over my career. The universities now are not the same as they were 30 years ago when I was finishing. In 30 years, they won't be the same when you got your students finishing. So what are some things? These are my opinion. These are just some things that I see coming that I hope that you'll have the answers to. We've already talked about the large number of undergraduate students that are happening in exercise science, exercise physiology, and that's a good thing. Again, for our field, that's a fabulous thing. When I came out, there were very few jobs available. Right now, there are, I think I looked at American Kinesiology Association website, job website the other day, and there are 59 open jobs in kinesiology right now. That's amazing. It's amazing. So this is an opportunity. But also, on the other hand, we have to be careful how we handle this growth, because I've seen universities that have had, where they have exercise physiology classes that were 30 and 35 students. Suddenly with this growth, they say, we're not going to hire more faculty, we're just going to put more students in a class, and now they have 150 students in exercise phys. And they eliminate the lab classes because they don't have enough, they can't teach enough sections. So again, growth is great, but we've got to figure out, we've got to make sure that we handle it appropriately, so our educational quality, so your students coming after you get the same education that you got, the same high quality education you got. The changing university environment, this is happening in a variety of different ways, in different degrees across the country, but things like there's erosion of tenure going on, more and more clinical or instructional faculty are being hired on rolling 5-year contracts, as opposed to having tenure track positions. That's something that is happening, and many organizations are concerned with that. There is a societal desire to account for what's going on in higher education, this quantification of learning. How can we measure how much our students have learned? Should you be, as a faculty member, should you be responsible for what your students learn or not? These are big questions that are being debated, and they're going to affect what you do. There are even questions regarding the role of higher education in society. A governor from a southern state recently said that he was not in favor of funding higher education unless the courses that were offered had direct relevance to jobs. So he was saying, why should we have students take English courses, math courses? They've learned English in high school and math. These need to be job-related courses. So there's this discussion going on in society right now about what is the role of higher education. And you're going to play a part in that discussion, and you need to be aware that that's happening. Most of us can tell you there's a decrease in state support for public universities across the country. Many of our universities now are state-associated instead of state-supported, because that number has gone down so much. But that's something that's going to happen. That's one of the reasons that there's such a push for external funding. So again, these are challenges that you're going to have. Another one, let me state really quickly, is online education, and I won't get into the pros and cons of that. I'm going to get into one practical side of this that I'm not sure any of you have thought about, but I ran into this headlong at a university I was at, not recently, but a while back. And the question became, who owns your class materials? This university said, if you do an online class, we own the class materials that you develop because you have worked for us. And we can take those class materials and then we can offer that class without hiring you to do it. Who owns your class materials? At the time, I told the university, I said, you're fine, you can come take all my transparencies. I'll be glad to give you those. But these are the kinds of questions that are starting to happen in higher education and that you need to be aware of. Okay? It's going to be a fun time. So I have some last words. David, I think I'm actually on time for once. These are just some things that I couldn't fit anywhere else. I'm going to ask you all to be professionally graceful. Professionally graceful. And I'm just not saying let people run over you in this business. Set boundaries. Be firm with that. But be professionally graceful to the other people that you work with. People watch you and how you respond to things. If you respond with rage, indignant righteousness, people will remember that. Take it from me, believe me. They remember that stuff. Be professionally graceful to the people that you work with. Make your work environment better. Okay? You've got great examples here in the room, and I've pointed out many of them already. Take this kind of attitude back to your place of employment. Our society nowadays thinks that if we're not constantly in motion or we're constantly busy doing something, that we're not doing anything. And I would encourage you to take time to think and time to write. I mean, think about it. In this business, we are trying to push back the frontiers of knowledge. We're trying to come up with new stuff that no one's thought about before. How can you do that if you're constantly busy doing other things? Sit back, take some time. Take 30 minutes a day. Take a piece of paper and sit at your desk. Think big thoughts. Go out for a run. That helps me often. But the other side of this is write. This book I talked to you about, Robert Boyce, he did studies looking at if faculty just took 30 minutes a day and wrote every day, how much more productive they would be. And so his recommendation is, if you do nothing else, write 30 minutes a day. Put it in your calendar. Write it in your calendar. That's what I tell my students. Put it in your calendar. You're writing 30 minutes. You don't have to write 2 hours, 30 minutes a day. That adds up. And usually you can fit 30 minutes in someplace. If you're fitting in 30 minutes for a workout, you can fit in 30 minutes for your scientific writing. Do that. I'm going to encourage you that no matter how old you are in this business, try new things. Try new things. Don't stay with the same old stuff. I'm going to give you 2 examples that I have done in the last probably 5-10 years that have just absolutely reinvigorated my career, I think. At least I think it has. Kick PowerPoint out of your classroom. Too many times our students think of it as a TV set as you're going through PowerPoint slides, and they just sit there and mindlessly watch, and they don't take very good notes, and they're not engaged. About 8 years ago, I kicked PowerPoint out of my graduate classes, and in the last 3 years, I've kicked them out of my undergraduate classes. My evaluations have gone up, and my students the first day when you say we're not doing PowerPoints, and they go, oh. And after about the first week, they're all coming to you going, this is great. This is fabulous. I'm having to write notes. I'm thinking about this stuff. Just kick PowerPoint. There are actually federal agencies now that are prohibiting the use of PowerPoint in their presentations. So kick PowerPoint out of your classroom. Try it a couple times. Make a resolution to meet an academic in another field that is totally different from yours. About 3 years ago, I had the good fortune just to run in, actually, because he sat in front of us at the football games. He was a toxicologist. And we met through that, and we started chatting about some stuff. That's where my funding now is toxicology related stuff. And it's only because Weston and I started talking to each other. I've done the same thing with philosophers. Talk to other people outside your field. The interesting stuff in our business, where you can get money, usually is the intersection of these fields. So resolve to talk to other people. It's uncomfortable, and it's like kind of dating, because it's like, well, what do you do? What do you do? And you get better at telling your story really quick, okay? But try that, okay? And lastly, let me say one other thing here. I hope that you have a great journey and full of adventure and companionship. And when you look back as you go every day for you at this point is going to be an adventure. And you're going to look back and you're going to have people that will be with you the whole time. You'll have people that will be with you for a little bit of time. But these are the people that you need to help you get through your journey. Don't ever forget that. You don't do it by yourself. You don't do it by yourself. I've been very blessed to have many of the people in this room, many people at this meeting, and I hope many of you in my life and the rest of my journey. And it's great. It's great. And I hope that you have the same great journey. And so with that, I'm going to say thank you. We have got great breakout sessions, and I think I'm going to turn it over to David now, and they're going to talk about that. Thank you all for being here this early.